Hi Celestia, this is Mandy Sanghera, an international human rights activist from the UK who has been supporting victims of survivors of abuse for the last 34 years. It's great to be involved in your magazine and to be empowering the next generation of women. I'm somebody who started campaigning in the 80s about topics that a lot of people probably wouldn't want to talk about. So I'm one of the original founders of the UK Forced Marriage Unit. I'm an ambassador to many organisations. I've been an ambassador to UNESCO, to UN Women and other many organisations around the world, talking about issues that are really important to me. So for me, this is about my life purpose. This is my dharma. This is about my life purpose of serving others. As a person who's been brought up on Sikhism, my life is around social justice, paying it forward, serving others and standing up for social justice. So for me, what I do is I want to help the helpless, help the voiceless by being selfless myself. These are things that are ingrained in me. These are something that I'm so passionate about. I really believe in sending the elevator down to the next generation. I've had an amazing career for the last 3 decades where I've been able to travel around the world 3 times and travel to every continent and many countries around the world. And one of the things what I realized was that I had so much privilege. I have been given different life opportunities more than most people could ever believe and dream of. So now I give people seats at my table. I'm so passionate about making sure that no one is left behind, that every young woman or young boy who wants to go into activism or into tech or into other topics, that actually they follow their life purpose, what they want to do, and not always what society wants them to do. And I've been very lucky to work with the UK government, with the Foreign Office and the Home Office. I was one of the original founders of the UK Forced Marriage Unit over 15 years ago. And the reason I got involved in that was because I wanted to help people with disabilities, women that had intellectual impairments, who weren't able to always give consent to marriage. So for me, it was about really standing up for people that were really not probably going to be having their voice been heard or be supported. And then over the years, I've been linked to the UN, UNESCO. I've been lucky enough to speak at the House of Representatives and Congress 3 times, in the European Parliament. And again, for me, it's about using those platforms, Celestia. Having female representation at decision-making tables is the most important thing, whether that is at the UN or whether it's locally or even in decision-making offices in companies. We need to have women being paid equal to men. We know that actually gender equality has gone back over 131 years. And for me, that is never going to happen in my lifetime. So we have to take steps in the right directions. If we really wanted to have that change, we could really do that. So this is about people buying in and mentoring, giving people opportunities and giving internships that are paid, making sure that people, when they've had their children, that they come back and they can go back into leadership, that actually employers look at the work that women bring to the table, look at all their other transferable skills. UN has the UN Sustainable Development Goal, SG5, about getting gender equality and getting representation in leadership. But we need companies to look at that. They need to be hiring women. And it's not just a tick box to think, oh, I have a woman. What about the woman of colour? What about the woman with disabilities? What about all the other different nuances? So it's really important that when we're talking about representation and we're talking about female representation, especially because we know that companies sometimes don't want to hire women from certain ethnicity groups. They think, oh, they're going to go off and have a baby. If a woman comes back after maternity, what kind of training opportunities are there? How do we get her back into leadership? Dream to set up your own business, but you're too scared. Go and talk to other women leaders. Go out and ask for help. See what else is somebody's doing and see what are the challenges. And one of the other things I would say to you, sometimes it's not about reinventing the wheel, because sometimes there's some very good businesses that are up for sale. Go out and look at that business and take over the business. And sometimes we're so busy looking at just doing our own thing that we're not looking at what's gone before us. So it's about not reinventing the wheel. The thing is, like, work-life balance for me in the work that I do, because when you're dealing with people's lives and you're dealing with issues of abuse and human trafficking and issues that are really going to mentally challenge you and emotionally drain you sometimes, that you have to find a work-life balance. So for me, healthy eating and walking, trying to do that and having a spiritual routine of meditating and looking after my mental health is really important to me. Sometimes people see the glamorous side of you traveling the world. They never see the stresses at the airport, running from one side of the airport to the other to make a connection and dragging your bags with you. But what I would say that I have to look after myself, because I cannot pour from an empty glass. Because if I don't look after myself, and one of the things that I learned that the hard way was when I was evacuating from Afghanistan, I was getting so emotionally involved in trying to evacuate and save people's lives that I was sleeping like 2-3 hours a day, not even that some days, that actually I wasn't looking after myself. I was getting sick and I was getting run down. So it's really important that I listen to my body, that I look after myself, and also say no, because sometimes no is a part of the solution as well. There's been many people in my life that I think that are really, really inspirational. And to me, that I would say people like Phyllis Chesler, who is one of my mentors. And, when I was growing up in the 70s and the 80s, there were not women that looked like me who were South Asian that were given seats at the decision-making table. So there was not many women at the top at the UN. There wasn't many women in leadership. But actually in the 80s, we did have Indira Gandhi that was a prime minister, and you had Margaret Thatcher. But those were the only two women that were kind of in leadership positions when I was growing up. But if I look at activism and campaigning, the field that I was going in, there were grassroots organizations working like Southall Black Sisters and other organizations. And so what I realized was that actually I need to pave my kind of own path and be the master of my own destiny and kind of become the change that I want to see. I've been very lucky that I've been grown up in a very loving environment. I was the first child, first grandchild, but I'm not going to lie, because actually in my life that I have come across a lot of health challenges as a person. Sadly, I ended up with cancer when I was 21, and I ended up having a hysterectomy when I was 36, and I was not able to have my own children. Growing up in a Punjabi culture in the South Asian community, you're kind of defined by having children. But actually, I realized that my life was destined for me to be very different. I was already on a very different life purpose, where I was traveling the world. I was helping people around the world, whether it's in Africa, Latin America, India, wherever it was, that actually God had bigger plans for me. So he took something away from me so I could do what I could do. But sometimes we get in a stage in our life where we so focus on the negative that we never look at the opportunities that God has given us. So for me, I think that, yes, that was a difficult time for me, and something that I probably would look at that I regret that I wasn't able to have my own children, but I have nieces and nephews that I love more than life itself. And there are so many children that I mentor and support around the world and give them opportunities. There's young women in Afghanistan who now, you're supporting to become activists and campaigners. So for me, everything in our life happens for a reason, and you can't really dwell on the negatives in your life, because everyone has a setback in their life. I'm incredibly grateful to Celestia for picking me as one of their global leaders. It's something that I'm really passionate about, because actually I work around the world bringing up the next generation of people and making sure that they are being given opportunities to be activists and campaigners and being supported to get into politics and into leadership. So for me, now paying it forward with Celestia, looking at launching this with the next year's campaign around looking at women who are in leadership. What does it really look like? Because it can be quite lonely, but actually we want to learn and hear from everybody else. Thank you again for considering me and identifying me as your first global leader, because it's a baton that I will be paying forward to other women. I can promise you that.